Good evening. My name is Alexander Jones, and I am the immediate past boss list of the Epsilon Iota Iota chapter of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Tonight, I have the esteemed privilege of bringing you greetings on behalf of our current chapter boss list, Brother Ruel Dixon, who is with us tonight in a different capacity. We thank you for attending our Omega Uplift series. We created and launched our Omega Uplift series as a means to keep the Black community informed during the early stages of COVID-19. 5 years later, we have been able to create an impact on the lives of many individuals whose lives are affected by the over 35 different topics we have covered in our episodes. In the United States, autism spectrum disorder impacts 1 in every 45 adults and 1 in every 31 children that are diagnosed. We felt the need to have further conversation to speak about the importance and give true understanding of the diagnosis. I want to thank our Social Action Chair, Brother Gigi Martindale, and his committee for putting together this program to keep our community informed. Since the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated was founded on the campus of Howard University 113 years ago, we have been guided by our 4 cardinal principles of manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. Omega has played and continues to play a vital role in the social and economic growth of our country and enhancing the lives of African Americans. As a fraternity, we operate under 12 nationally mandated programs, which are centralized around issues in our communities. Epsilon Iota Iota has been a staple by providing service to the greater New Haven community for the past 34 years. Before we get started, I would like to share a few reminders that all participants will be muted during this presentation. We do encourage your active participation by utilizing the chat feature. All questions will be acknowledged at the appropriate time. I would like to take the time to thank our esteemed panelists for agreeing to participate and give their expertise on this very important topic. Our series moderator is a brother who plays many key roles in Omega, not only on the chapter level, but also on the district and international levels. He is no stranger to the greater New Haven community, where he serves as head coach to the Wilbur Cross boys basketball team. He is also the co-founder of Storytellers New Haven. He serves as a mentor to the youth, a leader amongst many men, and as an advocate for all. I would like to introduce to some and present to others our Omega Uplift series moderator, Brother Kevin Walton.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Brother Immediate Pass, for that introduction. Welcome, everyone. We're excited about our Uplift series this month. Good evening. Thanks for joining this month's Omega Uplift series, Community Conversation, Autism in the Black Community, Disrupting the Narrative and Breaking the Silence. Autism spectrum disorder is a complex neurodevelopment condition that affects children across all racial and ethnic backgrounds. However, despite its universal presence, disparities in diagnoses, access to services, and community awareness continue to persist, especially in communities of color. According to the CDC's 2025 data, the current autism diagnosis rates among children are Black children 1 in 27, Asian Pacific Islander children 1 in 32, multiracial children 1 in 34, Hispanic children 1 in 35, white children 1 in 52. This data marks a significant shift for the first time. Black children now have the highest rate of autism diagnoses in the United States, reversing earlier trends where white children were more frequently identified. While this may reflect progress in awareness and identification, it also raises important questions about why disparities still exist and how we can ensure that every child, regardless of race, receives timely, equitable, inclusive, and culturally competent care. Tonight, we gather to raise awareness, share lived experiences, and explore how we can collectively disrupt harmful narratives. Sorry about that. That's my aunt. She wants to get it. Tonight, we gather to raise awareness, share lived experiences, and explore how we can collectively disrupt harmful narratives, break the silence, and advocate for early diagnoses and access in the Black community. Our objectives for tonight include raising awareness. Autism is not a taboo topic. We must normalize conversations about neurodiversity in the Black community and challenge the silence that often surrounds it. Promote early diagnosis. Early identification leads to better outcomes. Recognizing signs of autism, such as delayed speech, limited eye contact, or repetitive behaviors, can help families seek support sooner. Breaking the silence. The myth of nothing being wrong can delay critical interventions. We must challenge the stigma and encourage dialogue within families, churches, schools, and the community spaces in which we occupy. And we want to empower advocacy. Families must be equipped to advocate for their children in schools, healthcare settings, and beyond. Knowing your rights and available resources is essential, and to improve access to services, from early intervention programs to behavioral therapy and educational support, services must be accessible, affordable, and culturally responsive. Tonight, we are joined by a panel of experts that will share their thoughts and experiences on their experiences with autism. So without further ado, we will bring in our guest. First up, we have Tracey Foskey. Tracey is the founder and executive director of the Total Joy or You TJ Autism Foundation. A native of New Haven, Connecticut, Tracey was inspired to launch the foundation after her son, Troy, TJ, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. Now 20 years old, TJ remains the heart of her mission to raise awareness about autism spectrum disorder, empower families, and provide meaningful resources for those navigating life on the spectrum. Tracey is a proud graduate of Delaware State University and has dedicated over 25 years of service as a social worker for the state of Connecticut. Her passion for youth and community engagement extends beyond her professional work. She is an active member of God's Miracles Unlimited Outreach Ministries, where she serves as youth advisor. Additionally, she is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, having served as co-chair of the Delta Academy and GEMS programs from 2021 to 2024. So without further ado, we'll bring in Tracey Foskey. Welcome to the program, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Tracey Foskey. My son, Troy Wiley, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3, who's now 20. And during that phase I was going through, not knowing what was going on, he wasn't talking, he wasn't making eye contact, and a family member reached out to his a family member reached out to his pediatrician, who and asked that he look into that. He did that, made a referral to Birth to 3 for an assessment. He was assessed and diagnosed with speech and language delays at the age of 2. It wasn't until he started school at the age of 3 where they noticed he wasn't interacting with his peers, he wasn't responding to his name, that they made the referral for another assessment through the early childhood assessment team through the city of New Haven. And it was during that time that he was diagnosed with autism. It was a shock for me. I've raised 2 family members and have always been around kids in my family, and it was all new to me. So it was a path I felt like I was taking on my own, with the help of family and friends who helped me navigate the whole process of getting him tested and getting the resources and services in place. He's able to thrive. He was nonverbal, and he's talking. Most of you up here probably know him. He talks way too much now. But my thing is, the earlier the intervention, the 3, he received services, speech therapy, occupational therapy from the school system, and as well as outside. I found resources outside. So he was receiving that 2 to 3 times a week up until like the age of 16. And I think it was COVID that where everything kind of went downhill, but he's made so much progress that we really didn't need the services. We would just go back and have follow-ups. He's now in high school. Well, not in high school. He actually graduated high school. We didn't take the diploma, we took the certificate. So the district was responsible for providing services for him, are responsible for providing services for him up until the age of 22. So he's now in an off-campus classroom where he's taking a college course at Gateway. He's also taken a college course at UNH through the Youth Entrepreneurs Program, where he's worked for the past 4 years through Youth at Work. I think the key is getting the services and getting the services in place and making sure that the kids are receiving the services they need so that they can thrive and be able to be a part of the community. And the reason for starting the foundation was I didn't want anyone to feel like I felt during that process. And I felt like there was a need in our community. When I started out, I started going to the support groups and the surrounding areas which a lot of our families don't have access to. And so I wanted to put those services and those resources in the community to provide to families. And so Troy has inspired me to start the foundation and also motivate me to not only advocate for him, but advocate and be a resource for those families that need it.
Thank you, Tracey. And yes, of course we all know TJ. No, he doesn't talk a lot. He's very friendly. So what we'll do for the audience, as brother Media Pass said, we'd ask that you put any comments, any questions in the chat. And what we'll do is we'll go on, introduce our next guest, and then you'll have opportunity to ask out all of our guests questions. So next up we have Miss Lekisha R. Anderson, a principal, autism advocate, author, CEO, and founder of G.R.A.C.E Foundation. Lekisha R. Anderson, the Ed.S, is a transformative educational leader, passionate autism advocate, published author, and devoted mother with over 25 years of experience in public education. She currently serves as principal of Lily E. Sutter Elementary School in Clayton County Public Schools, where she is known for her inclusive leadership, strategic vision, and dedication to student growth. As the proud parent of a vibrant child on the autism spectrum, Mrs. Anderson has made it a personal and professional mission to advocate for children with neurodiverse needs. She is the founder and CEO of the G.R.A.C.E Foundation, LLC, a nonprofit organization committed to growing resources for autism through community empowerment. The foundation offers education, sensory-friendly events, parent support, and advocacy for families navigating autism, with a special emphasis on supporting Black and underserved children. So without further ado, we'll welcome Lekisha Anderson to the show. Ms. Anderson, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for allowing me this opportunity to speak with everyone this evening. I want to first start off in saying that I am first and foremost a parent. And so with that, I lead with my heart as a parent. And I also lead with my heart as an educator, because we are preparing the world for our awesome children. And so in this work that we do and through the Chasing Grace Foundation, we do just that. We prepare the world for our awesome children while we prepare our awesome children for the world. And so I too am the parent of a beautiful, beautiful little girl on the autism spectrum. We call her lovingly the little professor. And something that we really had to embrace with autism and our diagnosis of her when she was just 2 years old was that the nuances that she displayed were not those that most people think of when they think of autism, right? And so Miss Tracey, Miss Foskey shared that her son was nonverbal, right? And so most people will associate a student or a child not being able to speak or communicate effectively with autism. But autism is a spectrum. And so it goes from one end to the next. And so I happen to have a little girl who is precocious and very inquisitive and extremely brilliant. And so when we were given our diagnosis when she was just 2 years old, my husband had a really hard time understanding what the doctor and the psychologist was expressing to us when she talked about the autism spectrum. He wanted to know, his question exactly was this: are you telling me that my daughter is on the autism spectrum because she's a genius? And so that was a very unique question, the psychologist said. And her answer was this: yes, I am telling you that your daughter is on the autism spectrum, not about all the things that you think she cannot do, but all of the things that she can do at her age and at this point in her development. And so when I speak with parents across the country, in Georgia, we often have conversation because all of our children enter into this world of autism world in different places. Some nonverbal, some very social. And so we don't want the community to just pigeonhole our children and being just one way, nor do we want them to limit them in their opportunity for growth and development. And so GRACE stands for G being growth and development. Our goal is to empower our community and understand that growth and development is possible and capable in all of our children, even those on the spectrum. We also want to make sure that we have reliable resources, that we're tapping into those reliable resources within our community that are there for the advancement of our children. The A stands for awareness, acceptance, and advocacy, right? There's a difference from being aware and accepting, right? And so we want to have those conversations in our community that help us advocate for our children, where we build awareness, which ultimately leads to acceptance of their nuances and how they actually can communicate and be a part of the neurotypical environment and communities. C stands for community awareness. It's important that every time I meet a family, every time I meet a stranger, that they walk away knowing something about autism. Because the more we talk about it, and the more we engage in conversation in our social places, in our churches, right, we increase the awareness of this neurological disorder, or in my family, we like to call it the reorder, right? Because there's nothing wrong with my daughter. She just sees the world differently. And honestly, watching the world through her eyes has made me, as an educator, as a mother, as a community member, see life so different. And so we share that with the community. You also heard that I'm an author of a book. What made me write this book, you might ask? I wanted parents that have children who miss those early warning signs not to beat themselves up, but to understand that it is very easy to miss, right? No one is looking for the rainbow when their children come into the world. We see our children as absolutely perfect and perfect for us. And so the book walks parents through birth to diagnosis, because we don't realize that the rainbow was there the old time. And we associate the rainbow with autism. So it becomes a symbol in the book of us accepting and seeing autism in the world of our children. And so as we go through this book, the little professor, she develops and she grows, and her rainbow does too. And so where I missed it as a mother and my husband missed it as a dad, we didn't realize that the fact that she was singing those nursery rhymes over and over and over again, that was really considered repetitive behavior, which was a what? Red flag for autism. We didn't realize that when the pediatrician was asking us, when we went for our checkups, how many words our child was able to speak, we were counting every word in every song that she sang, not realizing that those words did not consider receptive language, that she was unable to articulate her needs to us, that she was just simply repeating what she had heard. And so it was very easy for us to miss some of the warning signs. And so we encourage our community to start having conversation early on, that when we see those things that look different and feel different innately, we feel it. Please, let's start talking about it. In the state of Georgia, we were able to participate in a program called Babies Can't Wait. And this is a birth to 3-year-old program, much like Ms. Foskey talked about with her son. And so we were lucky enough to be a part of the Babies Can't Wait program from the age of 2 to 3. So, for the first year of my daughter's life, and us understanding that from 2 to 3, we had to have our therapy online. Imagine a 2-year-old having to have her therapy online. She didn't even know that her therapist was a real person for a long time. we had to teach a lot of different things to her in that process. However, that intervention was so pivotal in how she began to develop and to interact socially that she now is quite the social butterfly. And much like Ms. Foskey said, she doesn't speak quiet. She talks constantly. She wants to give love and joy to everyone that she meets, which is not the typical behavior that we associate with the autism spectrum disorder. And so you also spoke to the number of children that are now being diagnosed in the African American community. I think your statistic was 1 in 27, right? And when my daughter was diagnosed, it was 1 in 55. So the question is often raised, what has changed, right? And I think what has changed is that we're having interactions much like this tonight, where we're having conversation in our community. We're not afraid to ask questions at the pediatrician's office, and we're actually seeking assistance for those things that we find that we don't have the answer for when it comes to child development. And so I want to encourage each of you tonight that if you are a family member that supports someone with autism, if you are a parent of a child on the spectrum, please, let's have conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's be the support that we all need in order to get our children to the finish line. There are great things in this world for our children. Our children are more than capable. We just have to be the right support in the right place at the right time to make sure that they get the resources and the support that they deserve. Let me just share this one last thing in regards to the school system. Oftentimes, I meet parents of undiagnosed children as they come into the school system for the first time. And with that being said, many parents are looking for the school system to diagnose their children. And unfortunately, that is just not the role of the school system. And so we ask that parents use programs like Child Find, that after a child turns 3 years old, if you are a taxpayer in a community, you may go into your public school system and request an evaluation for free. You can have your child evaluated multiple times between the age of 3 and 5 years old. Once they become school age and they enter into kindergarten, we must go through the SST RTI process in order to provide services. But in that gap, right, in that small time, there is an opportunity for the school system to support you at that level. They say that the window of opportunity for intervention is between 18 and 36 months. Many times we miss that in denial and not understanding what it is that we actually are seeing in our children. So I, again, say go to your pediatricians, have these really tough conversations, but in a safe space, and get the work, get the support that you need for your children, right? And then hold our school systems accountable. Where they have programming, we have supports. You just have to be the advocate for your child. Don't take no for an answer. And then oftentimes in our community, we sit silent and we only take what is given. And so for those parents that have stood up and advocated for their children, they have received the resources that are available. And they're in our community. We just have to know what to ask for, where to ask for it, and to keep asking when we don't get the outcomes that we desire. And so as a mom, as an educator, and as a community member, I just encourage you all to keep chasing grace, that it is going to be sufficient, and that together, we can live happily on the spectrum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for that great information. So that's just a little taste of what we're going to get from once we start the conversation. And now I want to bring in our final panelist, certainly not least, is our esteemed leader, Brother Bosselus Ruel Dixon. Brother Dixon is an M.B.A, BCBA, and a BCBA. He's a behavior analyst serving in a public school district, facilitating the growth of a service model. Brother Dixon graduated from Southern Connecticut State University with a bachelor's in marketing and matriculated in Albertus Magnus College, where he graduated a master's in business administration. Ruel then changed course and attended Westfield State University, where he earned a master's degree in applied behavior analysis after some years of practicing in the field. Brother Dixon is currently in an educational leadership doctoral program at Delaware State University. His research interests looking at known behavior analytics principles can help with exclusionary discipline in our public school system, especially as it relates to minority students. Brother Dixon's goal is to make impactful and meaningful change and experiences for students of color in education. Ruel is also the owner of Connecticut Behavioral Services, LLC, which provides premier home services to families in Connecticut, parent training, and school consultation. So without further ado, we'll welcome Brother Dixon to the program. And Brother Dixon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brother Walton. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just want to start out by saying thank you to my two esteemed panelists, Tracey and Lekisha, for giving their take and how autism spectrum disorder has impacted their life. And my take or my lens on this is going to be a little bit different. What I can say is that throughout my years or my time in the field, I've seen a lot, right? Both in the school system, in home services, working in clinics. I worked in a clinic before. I worked at a hospital in a psychiatric ward. But one of the resounding things that I notice is that when it comes to our minority population, the resources aren't there, right? So if I was working in a home where that family was Caucasian, the resources were plentiful. But in the inner cities, right, we had a lot of families that sometimes had multiple kids in the house that has autism, and there were just not enough resources to impact them. And I think one of the main thing too, that what we're going to talk about later is, even so, when we look in terms of what we're going to do in terms of resource for helping our families in home, you will also find that the majority of therapists and BCBA's, board certified behavior analysts, are also not of African American descent, right? And we're going to go in a little bit into those numbers later, because I know what it is when when a parent or family, one, you're struggling with this understanding of what autism spectrum disorder is, how it is affecting your family, and now you have to include strangers in your house, right? When we're talking about home services, that can be tough. That can be tough, right? And understanding those cultural nuances can be a tough thing too. But there's ways as a parent that you could advocate, for your needs, which is I'm going to touch on a little bit. But that space, that realm, and living in that space is a very difficult thing to do sometimes for some families. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you see my screen, Midnight? Good. All right. Thank you. So at first, I'm going to talk a little bit about some terminology. I'm going to talk about autism and behavior. I'm going to talk about a little bit about advocacy, support, and some professional tidbits that I've learned over the years, right? So when we're talking about terminology, you have some terms that we see. Board certified behavior analyst are some terms that are thrown out there. Board certified assistant behavior analyst, behaviorist, behavior specialist, behavior technician, and registered behavior technician. And the reason why I put these terms on this page is, unfortunately, in our field, we have, especially with companies that provide home services, there's a lot of currently some fraudulent behaviors have been happening, right? And what I want to implore our families to do is that when you have someone coming in your home and they're going to help with these services, and at school too, essentially you would want to advocate for a board certified behavior analyst to be a part of that team, right? In different states, I know in Connecticut, you either board certified behavior analyst or a behavior analyst for short. You may hear some people say behaviorist. You may hear some people say behavior specialist, right? There's a lot of different terms that you hear in like Florida and North Carolina to represent certain things, right? But when you are looking for someone, to work with your child, whether it be in a school, in a public school, and also at home, you want to lean to having a board certified behavior analyst as the supervisor, right? Or a board certified assistant behavior analyst, right? Or for short, if someone say that they're a behavior analyst. And when we're talking about direct care, right? You have behavior technician and registered behavior technician. And there's a difference in both those two jobs or roles or delineation, right? So what is a board certified behavior analyst? A board certified behavior analyst certification is a graduate level certification in behavior analysis. BCBAs are independent practitioners who can provide behavior analytic services and supervise the work of RBTs, BCABAs, and other professionals who implement behavior analytic intervention. So what does that mean? When you're talking about your team, right, your supporting team of people, right, a BCBA is probably the top tier person that you want on that team, or a behavior analyst for short, right? These are the people that's going to be coming in and they're going to be writing interventions and, doing an FBA, a BIP. They're going to be writing teaching strategies and how to teach appropriate behaviors, or just to teach skill set or social skills, right? So you'd want a BCBA on your team. A BCABA, right, is a board certified assistant behavior analyst and is an undergraduate level certification in behavior analysis. Professional certified at the BCABA level may only provide behavior analytic services under the supervision of a BCBA, right? BCABAs may supervise a registered behavior technician. So if you have someone at your house and they're showing up, or at school, in a public school, and they're saying that they're a BCABA and they are the one that's going to be supervising your child's case, you would want to ensure that, ask the question, who's your BCBA, right? Because that BCABA needs to have a BCBA supervising them on the work that they're implementing with your child, right? Now, when we say a direct care staff, right, there's two types. We have behavior technician and we have registered behavior technician, right? A registered behavior technician, which is the one that you want, is a certification, has a certification as a paraprofessional certification in behavior analysis. RBTs assist in delivering behavior analytic services and practice under the direction and close supervision of an RBT supervisor and or RBT requirements coordinator who is responsible for their work. Now, the difference between a behavior technician and a registered behavior technician, one, it comes down to money. When you have a registered behavior technician, that person, one, has to be registered and certified by the board, the BACB, right? But a registered behavior technician typically costs for more dollars. So you have some companies that, because it's not a law, right? In Connecticut, they're kind of writing it in the law now, where as you need to be an RBT when you're working with kids, individual on the spectrum, right? So some states are making that change, but you have in some states where there's that discrepancy, and because of the amount of money that you'd have to pay for one professional over the other, they may choose to go with a behavior technician. A registered behavior technician, one, has to do a 40 hours competency course sequence in autism, and it talks about teaching pedagogies. It talks about how to teach social skills. It talks about how to address behaviors, whether it's increase or decrease in behaviors. They have to do a 40-hour competency, 40-hour course. Then, well, they also have to get a background check before they start that 40-hour course. Then after that, they have to do a competency where they have to show some skills, whether they have to talk about it, model it, or engage in it in vivo, right? And then they have to be certified. They have to be supervised by the BACB. So a BCBA like me would have to say that, okay, now I'm saying that I'm going to be the supervisor for John Doe, the RBT. Once they get all that paperwork, then they have to go to Pearson VUE, take a test, and pass that test in order to be registered. Then they have to go have ongoing supervision throughout the year that they are RBT, and every year now they have to now retake their competencies in order to be recertified every year. As of January 1, 2026, now RBTs will have to now do 12 hours of CEUs every 2 years, but it's ensuring that they're keeping up with the changes in the science and the technology when we're working with our families, when we're working with our kids that have autism spectrum disorder. So they have a lot more rigorous process to go through to become RBT. Because of that, you may have some places, as I said before, will prefer a behavior technician because that rigor is not necessarily there. So sometimes you want to advocate for an RBT working as a team, as a direct care person. Right? Now, how do you know? You go to www.bacb.com, and this button right here that says Verify Certificate, you will click on that button. Then it will bring you to a page, and you look at the BACB certificate registry. You ask that person for the certification number, which they will give. Mine is 115-200-59. Then you punch that number in there, right where it's the certification number. You press enter, and then you should see that person name pop up as a BCBA. That's how you verify if the person that's working with your child is a BCBA, because the BACB is the governing body for all behavior analysts nationally and internationally. And that's the same way how you would check if an RBT has their certification to be an RBT. And when you're an RBT, you have to be supervised by a BCBA, right? So those are some of the things that I'd like to put out there as not necessarily misinformation, but how to tell you to get to the best quality of intervention in terms of supervision and direct care staff. So then we say, what is autism? Autism spectrum disorder refers to a broad range of conditions characterized by challenges with social skills, repetitive behavior, speech, and nonverbal communication. There's a lot of definitions out there, right? I think for me, this was the most palatable definition that I came across, right? And with that, I want to speak to what it is not. Autism is not a disease. It is not, right? It's not a look, right? As we talked about earlier, we talk about it being on a spectrum, one end of the spectrum to the other. You know, there is, I've heard and not verified, but you know, I've heard that, you know, a lot of would say geniuses or people who are we look at like a lot of presidents and Einstein and some of these great people. They say that those people have have known to have autism because they have that rigid hyper focus on one activity or one thing, right? Bad behaviors, right? And this is one of the things where a lot of the time, you know, where that word bad kind of, you know, it labels sometimes a specific population of people. But there are no bad behaviors, right? Behaviors are in context, because there's a behavior that I could tell you about that's bad, but in a different context, it fits perfectly, right? The R word, that is not autism. And your child is not suffering from autism, right? Definitely not suffering from autism. Your child just sees the world in a different way, right? And it's your job as parents, as educators, as advocates, just ensure that we're advocating and getting the right needs and services for your child. What should we think about? Right? There's challenges in social skills. So when we have someone and they're working with your child, right? What are different teaching mechanisms that they're using to teach social skills to your child? Is it a social story? right? How they generalize it across different population. Because when you're teaching a skill, right, to a child with autism, you also have to be able to generalize that across different parents in the house, into school, at the grocery store, everywhere. How do you teach those skills? They have it generalized in different environments, right? And as I said before, behaviors are contextual, right? And you have some behaviors that you want to reduce, and you have some behaviors that you want to increase, right? Some of the times you may have tantrum behavior, you may have aggressive behavior, right? You may have some type of stereotypy that you want to increase and decrease, but you decrease those things by teaching some form of replacement behavior, right? And then on the flip side, there's some other behavior that you want to increase, right? You know, we talk about, you know, I mean, like teaching, going through SLP, going through OT, and start formulating and shaping those skills. So now your child could be able to start talking and having verbal behavior. And then we come to a point where now, you know, we say that they're talking too much. But you know, there's different behaviors that, you know, you may want to reduce and you may want to increase. But a thing that when you're reducing those behaviors, you have to teach replacement behaviors, right? And then communication, right? There's different ways how we communicate. Other than verbal communication, you have a PEC system, picture exchange communication system, right? Where your child may, when they have a BCBA and have a robust program around them, right? They take that picture, give it to you, and that's for them to notify or tell you that, okay, I want cookies, right? And then you have some augmentative and alternative communication systems, an AAC device that will help them with speech, right? But then in the beginning stages, before there was proper communication, they may hit you, grab your hand, and pull you to the fridge. And they're pointing, right? They're tacting to get to something, right? But that's how they were trying to communicate to you, to say you that, Mom, Dad, I want something, right? Mom, Dad, I'm upset. And sometimes that upset look like some aggressive behavior or some tantruming, right? But we want to think about communication, right? Advocacy. Now, two different lenses, right? My role in the public school and my role as a business owner, right? And in the public school system, a lot of the times, you know, advocacy maybe it's slim, and especially when you don't know what you're asking for, right? But there's educational and a medical diagnosis when we come to autism, right? And in the public school setting, there may be an educational diagnosis, but you need a medical diagnosis, especially if you're going to get services, in-home services for SLP or PT or behavior M.B.A. services in home, right? And when you're looking at that team, your planning and placement team, you want to advocate to make sure that there's a BCBA on your planning and placement team, right? Your PPT team, right? But when you're looking, some of the tests that you might want, you want to look for them to be doing is maybe an ADOS, a CARS, the Vineland, right? Some of the tests that there's going to be do a battery of tests, but these are some of the tests that you be like, okay, if I see an ADOS, if I see a CARS, if I see a Vineland in there, I'm like, okay, they're going down the right path. Now I know that if I don't see these things, I might want to advocate, hey, I need you to do an ADOS for me, or as a part of this testing mechanism, or you know what I mean, you may ask them to do a VB map or something like that, right? But the next thing when we're talking about advocacy is shared information. When we're here, don't be scared to share information, because the more information, and I know it's hard for us to trust our team, because I've been in some places, I've been in some situations where I'm the only one at that table, and I have to advocate for us. I have to advocate for us. And I also been in some situation, I'm like, man, you're making me hard for me to advocate for you. But, you know, you have to look at your team as your network in a public school, advocate for what you need, right? And get a release to start, you know, I mean, to have your school team may talk to your home team, right? Because a lot of the skill set that you've seen in the school, you want to be generalized at home, right? And then now what we're talking about on the home front, you want to ensure that ABA service is with a BCBA and an RBT, right? Listen, because in Connecticut, not only a BCBA could provide home services for individuals with autism, right? So you have sometimes some school psychologists, you have some SLP, you have a lot of people that could be under the guise of providing these services. And some are good. Some are good. But sometimes, we've in the past, especially recently in Connecticut, we've had a lot of fraudulent things happening, right? So you would want to advocate to make sure that you have a BCBA. And as I say, you go on the BCBA, you check if that person's certification is legit, and an RBT. And you want to collaborate with the school team. You want your home BCBA to collaborate with your school BCBA. So we have a cohesive, interventions and skills teaching that's going on for your child, right? But more so, how are these skills generalized across different settings, right? And we want to talk about culturally competent goals, right? Because some of the times, they may want to go for your child to, speak at a low volume tone in the house, but we Black, we all talk loud, right? Or using reinforcers that reflect the child's environments and interests, right? Prioritize parent voice in intervention and planning. You have a voice when it comes to your intervention and planning for your child. Because when you're in the school system, when they're going to do any type of testing for you, or if a BCBA is going to do any testing, that person needs to get consent in Connecticut. They have to get a consent, a written consent, that you gave them the opportunity, you allowed them to say, yes, they could do an FBA, a VB map, or some type of testing with my child, right? When you write a behavior intervention plan, you need to give them consent. When they make changes to behavior intervention plan, they need to come back to a PPT and let you know about these changes, and you need to agree to those changes to behavior intervention plan. You need to be a part of that team and advocate for your child. And when you can, you get a BCBA that looks like you and understand the unwrittens. But that's going to be a little bit tough, right? Because as we say, there's 75,000 BCBAs here in America, 5,000 BCABAs, right? But in the state of Connecticut, that cut off. But in the state of Connecticut, there's only 1,400 BCBAs in the state of Connecticut, right? And it's hard now to say, okay, in some places we're gonna get those services. But if you look at this map, out of those 75 or 1,000 BCBAs, only 5% are Black. So oftentimes, a lot of the things that I get from my family is that one, well, they love the fact that I'm Black, which is good, but now to get a Black RBT may be a little bit tough. So sometimes we have to depend on our allies and just understand that, as long as you understand what is going on and you start learning and doing your research, you're able to hold anybody accountable, whether they're Black, white, or indifferent, right? But it's only 5% of BCBAs out of that 75,000 is Black. I know in Connecticut, I probably know 10 or 12 Black BCBAs, right? And out of the 10 and 12 that I know, only 3 that I know, including me, has a company that's providing home services. One has a clinic that provides ABA services too, right? And the others that I know, they work in a school system, or they work in a R.E.S.C. like ACEs, and they provide services through there. So they don't necessarily do any home services. So we would want, right, you need to have a Black BCBA because of their understanding your cultural nuances, but it's going to be a little bit hard, right, with this 5% that we're looking at right here. And then support. Collaborate with your team, school and medical team. Hire advocate if necessary. If you need to have advocate, hire an advocate. Your school BCBA, your home BCBA could also be a school BCBA when when you're dealing with the school district. Those people could come together and talk. Your home BCBA could look at what's being done in the school. I'm like, okay, I may or may not agree with that, right? But there's different communities. Autism in Black Inc., Black Autism Support Society, the Color of Autism Foundation, right? These are different foundations that I've heard of that provide some support to Black families with their loved ones having autism spectrum disorder, right? And lean on family and close friends. Story, I have a cousin. She lives in Canada, and 5 years ago, before my daughter was born, she was pregnant. She had her son. Saw her son all the time on Instagram, and we talk a lot through text, and But I never got a chance to go see her. So recently, this February, during President's Day weekend, I went up to Canada and saw her and her family. She has a younger daughter too now. And she wasn't nervous when I was coming, but she said that she knew that the minute I walk in the house, I would know and understand what's going on. Her son has autism, also as a speech delayed, right? So we were here and we're talking, and I said, "Cuz, why you didn't call me?" You know, I mean, she said, "Ruel, you know, I knew I needed to call you. I knew you would help, but it was tough, right? I'm Jamaican, so it was hard for her to get through those nuances and even teach her family, teach her mom about what it is that she's dealing with on a day-to-day basis, right? She tried, but her mom was like, "Oh, me grow tight. Oh, he'll be good," right? Because her mom don't understand where we are. But now she lean on me, right? She called, she talked to me, "Hey, what do you think about this?" When I was there, I was trying to find a BCBA in their near vicinity. But unfortunately, it's Canada. They have about 1,600 BCBAs in the whole country. So there's no one close to her to even provide service. The only person that was close was 2 hours away, right? And the last thing I would want to say, some tidbits. It will be a lifelong commitment, right? How do you prepare your loved one for the world, right? It will be a lot, and it will be a lot of work, but consistency matters. Consistency between you or your family, the school system, right? The home services, the community, consistency helps. And it's just a new way of thinking, right? And you find your own support system because you're gonna need it. You're gonna need it, right? And if you have a partner, take some shifts. Tap out, take some shifts because it's a lot, right? And one of the key things, keep your initial diagnosis report. Keep your initial diagnosis report because if you're going to get ABA services in your home in Connecticut, you're going to need this report to, you know what I mean, for the BCBA or the company that's asking for these services. They need that to present it to the insurance companies. And if you don't have that and you have a hard time trying to find that, then that could be some delay to services. So keep your initial diagnosis report. Everyone has to do the same thing. And last but not least, just remember that behavior is communication. Behavior is communication. We may not know what it's saying, but it's communication. And just love on your young ones. Love on them. They see the world through a different lens, but these are some of the ways that you could advocate and support and build your village that will help you in the future. And that's it for me, brother Walter.
Okay. All right. Thank you, brother Dixon, for that wealth of information. So we have a couple of comments in the chat. Before we get to them, I want to bring Tracey and Lekisha back in, and specifically ask both of you. We'll start with Tracey to talk a little bit about your foundation and some of the things that you do with your foundation and your goals and things of that nature. And Lekisha, when Tracey's done, I ask you to do the same for the G.R.A.C.E Foundation.
Okay. TJ, Total Joy RU Autism Foundation is a nonprofit organization committed to raising public awareness regarding autism spectrum disorders and providing resources to families in the community. We actually have a bi-monthly support group, which we meet bi-monthly virtually. And then we have social activities every other month with the children and their families. We're having our end of the year activity, Dave and Buster's, in June. And we have a book club. We started a fathers group. We want to restart that. It kind of went by the wayside, but we want to restart that. So we're looking to do something for Father's Day for the fathers. And we also have a transition group. And I think it's really crucial for this time because the services never end. These kids need services. So after high school, that's it. If parents don't know, their next step. So right now in our transition group, it's from 16 to 16 plus, and we're working with the kids on their goals. So that's what we have. We just celebrated 10 years. We had our 10-year gala in April, and we also had our annual autism awareness walk.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have a pageant for females with unique abilities, and we have that every November, and we're going into our 3rd year for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Lekisha?
Thank you. Chasing Grace is a nonprofit that focuses on supporting families of newly diagnosed, that have been newly diagnosed. And so I have a hotline that I use with usually more so mothers, but I do open it up to families of newly diagnosed children. And so we're a support group in that regard. And so we do have that access for our families to contact us, especially in those times when it gets extremely hard. And so we really focus on trying to establish the new norm, right? The new normal. And for a lot of people, that is very difficult because it is a new way of thinking and a new way of operating. Also, we do Red Flags for Autism. We have a program where we communicate and we partner with our local services where we talk about those red flags and making sure that our community is aware of some of the signs that they can see and that they can talk about in their families when they see these signs, so that there's more of a communication between the pediatricians and our families. And we also do an annual autism walk. We try to partner with a local organization that supports inclusion of children with neurodiverse needs. And so most recently this year, we partnered with Girl Scouts of America, our local Girl Scout troop, where there are several girls that are a part of the local troop that are on the spectrum. And so they find great joy in being in those social settings with neurotypical children that respect and accept their neurodiverse ways. And so we want to show families that their children can be a part of these organizations, that they don't have to keep them inside or in a special bubble, that there's benefits of socializing in those neurotypical situations. And so we look forward to that each year, partnering with different organizations that are inclusive of children on the spectrum. And then the end of the year, we do a gift giving called Gifts from Grace. And so oftentimes our parents don't really understand sensory toys. And so we try to expose them to different sensory items that their children may find as great comfort, especially in times when of meltdown or just a need to have some quiet time. And so normally those are not the toys that you buy from Toys R Us or Amazon. Those aren't the ones that your families look for. So we introduce them by giving away gifts, sensory boxes to children on the spectrum. And so exposing those families to those different types of support apparatuses that they can have in home, in the car, and that they can leave at their relative's house, so that there's always a sense of comfort for those children, especially in those times of heightened stimulation, where they can find some peace. And so we do expose them through our Gifts from Grace program.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'll stay with you too. And Ruel, we have some, I'll get to you in a second, right? I just wanted to go back because when we were preparing for this and we talked about both of you being mothers, both of you advocating for your kids, but one is on an early end with your daughter being 5 and Tracey with TJ being almost 21, and talk about what the services look like. But I just want to touch on, so growing up, right? I think if you grew up in a community like mine, Staten Island, and we saw a kid that was different or whatever, and folks would just say, oh, that kid is special, but there was nothing really happening because that taboo, right, in our community of not wanting to get help and things of that nature. I think we all have those folks in our family that we knew that needed some attention, but for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. So my question for you two becomes, what are, you touched on it, what are the barriers that might delay autism diagnosis in Black children? And I'll go with you, Lekisha, then Tracey, and then Ruel.
I think one of the barriers is just not understanding the signs, not really. It seems like in our community we're more conditioned to accept things like ADHD and ADD and ODD and EBD, all the other Ds. But when it comes to autism, because it doesn't have a look, because it's not a cookie cutter diagnosis. It doesn't look the same way for every child. And it's a lifelong diagnosis. This is not something that they outgrow. We can discipline away. I think that we don't have those conversations, and it can be very uncomfortable. A lot of children on the spectrum, they stem openly, and that's something that can't be controlled, right? I can't spank you to stop you from stemming because it's a part of who I am. It's a part of your nervous system. It's a part of what keeps you balanced. And so I think those types of situations keep us from having conversation openly. We keep those babies in the house. We don't socialize them. I'll just say for my daughter, she's 6 now, and I have socialized her at every turn. It wasn't enough when they told me, oh, well, she may be able to qualify for, let's say, special needs pre-K. There was no way I was going to put my speech delayed child in a special needs pre-K class where no one talks, when my goal for her was to be a talker. And so a lot of times we just don't know where we fit in the scheme of things. And so it's just easier to fade to Black, let someone give us a umbrella diagnosis like, oh, it's speech delay. We'll just give them speech services, and then be angry when the speech doesn't fix the problem that we see it as, because it's really not a problem. It's a difference, but it's not a problem. We just haven't identified it for what it is. So I think that the delay comes in that most parents don't want to talk about it early. They don't want their perfect baby to be imperfect in any way. I don't think any parent does, and that we usually pick it up at the school level. That's the first time we start having conversations, because it's either disturbing the classroom, right? Or there's something that happens that's very alarming, and we want to make sure that we address it immediately, right? Because safety and security is important for our children. So if your child's an eloper, or if your child is a self-inflicts, we need to be able to address that in the school system. And so we have to place that somewhere. And in order to provide that service, we have to do the process. And so it takes our parents a little longer to come along and really openly accept that there is a difference, right? Not something wrong, but just simply a difference.
Thank you. Tracey, same question.
An exact same answer, but I will also add that a lot of people don't like the diagnosis, right? And it's not a disability, right? It's a different ability. And that's how I look at it. And a lack of education. And I think it was Ruel who said with his cousin's mother, it was like, oh, that boy would be fine. And that's what we grew up on, that nothing's wrong with him, be fine. He's just acting out. He's a bad boy. He's a boy. And that's what boys do. So I think it's just a lack of education and not, following through. And then once they get to a certain age, because earlier the intervention, the better. It's kind of not hard to treat, but it will be a lot easier to treat or to address early on, opposed to like at 8, 9, and 10, when they're really in school and they're really acting out, and now the teachers have no control and they're calling you to pick them up.
Okay, thank you. And so Ruel, we'll bring you in, right? And to answer the same question, but also from the perspective of not only answering that question, but then in your role, either in school or in your with your business, your ability to advocate. Because I will say that we have fierce advocators in Miss Anderson and Miss Foskey, right? But not all families have the wherewithal for whatever various reasons to be able to advocate for that. So is that part of your role?
Yes. So I think, one of the things we're looking at, right? We're talking about early intervention, right? And when a child, 2, 3, and to get those assessment, right? Families are scared. Black families are scared. They don't want to talk about these things that my child can and cannot do, right? And then they don't want a system. They don't want to trust a system that looks white, right? That is a very hard thing for them to do. So I think that, you know, I mean, some of the times, you know, the misdiagnosis or the late diagnosis could also be from the fear of the family, right? Now, when we're talking about a school system, right? Sometimes when we're melanated, right? They will say that, like Lekisha said, they will go to the ADHD and will go to all those things before they go to autism, because now at some point in time, they have to get some type of outside person to come in and test, which also costs a school district money, right? That sometimes, you know, they don't want to pay for. But as a BCBA, my job is, when I see this in the classroom, when I see this with students, is now I advocate for the team to be like, hey, we need to do an ADOS, right? One of the things that school district has done now, they have started training other professionals like psychologists, LCSWs, to do these testing, that they could do the ADOS on the cars and all that type of stuff in-house, right? But there's also proliferation of BCBAs and information and education in the school system that now makes some school district more readily available to even go down that road. But in the past, when there was not that much information, when ASD was just something that we don't know what to do, you know, there was just a lot of fear on the parent side. The school district may or may not know what to do, or they may just choose not to go down that road, or it's easier to say that it's ADD, ADHD, or oppositional defiant, right? OHI, right? Before they even take those further testing. So as a BCBA in a school district, yes, it is my job when I see these things to advocate for our families and our Black families also, right? Because I want to be the one now in preschool or elementary school, because we have BCBAs in that level, like, no, we need to do some testing. No FBA or BIP is going to solve this behavior. We need a VB map here, right? We need a Vineland here to talk about some language deficits and all that type of stuff. Like, those are the different lenses that we have to look at. And even now, where we are in my school district, where I think is progressive on that, we still have to get some pushback sometime, right? But now, also now is training staff to do these things and do these things in-house, so we could start providing that intervention in the school. But then on the flip side of that, now, you know, when you know, if a child is tested and it is said that that child has autism spectrum disorder, now on the back end, some places don't know what to do with that. Some school districts don't know what to do with that and how to address it, right? And what do you need to do, and having the resources in there to address those things, you know? But as a BCBA, yes, I do advocate for those things with families, you know what I mean, in the school district. But I've been in the school district. I'm sitting here, I'm across the table. I know these people. I don't have a problem speaking up, right? I'm like, no, we need to do this. We need to do that. But sometimes it takes an advocate or a lawyer coming into the system for them to be like, okay, now I'm gonna have to pay for this assessment to get done, right? So, you know, I think that some school districts are getting better because there's resources now, and there's an influx of like BCBAs and SLP, and like autism is just like a misnomer no more. Like, it's a known thing, right? So you will get some more services depending on where you are. In some rural places, it may not be the same, but if you're in certain school districts, you may get that. I know families that move to our school district just for the services.
May I
Right?
ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Just from the school system perspective as well. Looking at, so I'm going to take my own daughter who has an ASD diagnosis, yes? And so that doesn't necessarily qualify her in the school system for additional services. And so a lot of times our parents will walk in the door with a diagnosis from the psychologist, right? And not understand why the school system is not providing some type of additional service. And so one of the things I do have conversation with parents, especially those that do not qualify outright for special education services, is that we talk about the importance of the 504, right? And so these are different avenues. And a lot of times our parents are not aware of the alternate, right? They only hear maybe about one thing, thinking, oh, my daughter or my son has this diagnosis. That means I qualify for said services. And so they don't realize that the school looks at ASD differently than the psychologist looks at it, okay? The school system wants to know, does this diagnosis impede learning, right? Yes or no? That's really the answer, yes or no. Does it impede learning? If the answer is no, it does not impede learning, then there's no services provided. And so that can be oftentimes frustrating for parents because they're like, but I have a diagnosis, right? And so we have to learn, again, in our community, what's the back door? And in most cases, the back door is the 504. The 504 plan has to acknowledge the fact that there is a what? A diagnosis, right? Whether it's OHI or whatever, if it's ASD or it's EBD, whatever, it has to acknowledge that. And that those accommodations that we seek for our children can be completed in that 504 process, right? And so I think, like you said, a lot of it is just not knowing, right? Not knowing what our options are, who we should be talking to, who's on our team. Sometimes parents do believe that the school system is kind of against them. It's not a partnership. And so in some cases, in our school system, ABA therapists can't even come into the school. So if your child is receiving ABA outside services, that cannot continue in the school, right? And so that's not even an option. So when you talk about that collective team, the parent can give access to the RBT, can give it to the BCBA to come to the meeting. But when it comes down to the services within the building, there's a limit to what can happen from the private, right, and to the public. So again, these are all those walls and laws and different nuances that our parents are not aware of, right? But when we're not talking to each other, when we're not at the cookout talking about it, right? We're not laid back beside the pool. Our counterparts are doing that. Becky, Maria, they're all talking about it. Did you hear about Sally's baby, right? We, on the other hand, like, don't talk about Keisha's baby, right? Because I don't want Keisha to be mad at me. My own sister didn't share my daughter's diagnosis. You know why? Because she didn't know if I was okay with it. Whereas in other families and other cultures, they openly share this information and they pool resources together, and whatever was good for the kid, I'm gonna tell you about it, whether or not it works for you. Most of the resources that I come about and I share with families don't come from our community, right? My handicap sticker didn't come from my community, right? My ability to go through TSA didn't come from my community. It came from outside communities who are sharing this information openly, and we feel it, our pride, right? We're trying to save face, right? When we go through the airport. Listen, my daughter is the VIP. I rock with her when we've traveled. We don't wait for anything. I've done Disney on a whole nother level, just being with her. And you might want to get you a baby on the spectrum and do Disney too. It's a different thing, but sometimes we feel that we're confined to this little box, and we're not. The world is our oyster. We just have to go about it in a way that we're communicating and talking to each other. So here I am in Georgia, you're in Connecticut. Right now, this is what it's going to take to foster stronger communities that serve this population of children.
And it's so different because, I mean, as you're saying, but here in Connecticut, like you have the IEP, and I mean, there's BCBAs in the school district, and there's DTI being done and everything, right? If
it's an IEP, if you have the IEP and it's written in your IEP, yes. But if you're looking at a child who is getting ABA services outside because it was in their initial documentation, they don't necessarily qualify for that in school if there's no indication, if there's no IEP, right? You can't get it.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Walton. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. No worries. We want to have an engaging conversation. So, Ruel, were you done making your points, or we?
Yes.
We're good to move. Okay. Good. Thank you all. So, so how do we, continuous conversations? I think that's the biggest thing, right? Talk about advocacy, and you talk about awareness, and then you talk about this kind of trying to find these services. So my question now becomes, what resources or services have been helpful or hard to access for families navigating autism, right? So what's the easiest and most helpful, and what's the hardest services to access? Okay.
I would say respite care. For those families who have children, and autism is labeled in levels. So you level 1, level 2, level 3, right? And so those parents and families that have children who need extensive support, right? I find that they find it hard to find respite, right? How can they get a break? You know, there's no sitter. It's very hard for a parent of a child on the spectrum to release our children to anybody. And so we are very guarded in who is interacting with our children, right? And we almost feel like we're the only ones that can do it sometimes. And so we just don't trust well. And so those parents, I find that the parents that I speak with who have children who have more severe concerns, find it hard to find a break, just a moment to breathe, especially if they do not have family members or a village that supports them. And that's one of the things that our Chasing Grace Foundation also focuses on, is the building of the village. Your village is not your DNA. It's not who is born to you or who your family members are. It's who supports you and your child in a way that fosters growth and development for you and for your baby. And so when we look at village building and really tapping into those that really care, you will find some rest. I remember the days where it just felt like I could never let her hand go, right? And then I was training my friends in my village on how to interact with her. And now I can take a nap and leave her at my girlfriend's house, and we know all is well, because she's going to have the chicken nuggets. She's going to have the graham crackers. She knows exactly what she's going to need to have a happy space, but it takes time, right? And we have to educate everybody. That's why no one should meet a family with autism and not know something about autism when they leave them. No family. I talk about it everywhere, at work, at the grocery store, just sitting at the pool, wherever we are. Even when people haven't asked me about it, I announce. I don't apologize for my daughter's differences, right? I announce them. Hey, this is my daughter, Kendallin, and she's on the autism spectrum. Pleasure to meet you, right? So that eliminates you looking at us crazy, right? So I've already let you know. I bring you in from the beginning, and that's something we as a people don't do well. We just don't. We're not vulnerable well with each other, especially because we feel judged. So I think respite is the hardest thing for us to find.
Okay, thank you. So finding that time and space to breathe on your own a little bit. Okay, got it. Thank you. And Tracey.
I want to say finding services, but a lot of times the services are there. They just don't take a lot of the family's insurance. So that can be a barrier for most families. And then, finding after school care for kids, because most of the time school ends at 3 and parents work till 5 or 6. And so, you can find a child care or daycare, but a lot of daycares won't take a child on the spectrum depending on their level. So child care, after school programs, summer programs, before school programs, and again, respite, because again, we don't want our kids going with anyone. And my son is 20 years old, and I can count on my one hand how many houses he stayed at. So I'm very, very selective with that.
Okay, thank you. I just want to touch back on something when you talked about the insurance. It reminds me, over at ACEs, where we provide services for students and families impacted, students and adult learners and families impacted by autism. And one of our programs, I think, is like a pre-K program. It took them, I believe, 2 years for Husky to get them to get Husky to accept people's insurance, or for them to accept Husky. So that was it was painstaking for them to go through that process, but also to have to turn people away because of the insurance, right? But once the insurance was able to accept Husky, then the program now has a wait list, right? Because people know that. So we talk about those barriers. So thank you for raising that, Tracey. And Ruel, same question for you.
Yeah, it would be the same thing that Tracey and Lekisha start talk about, but insurance has a big thing to do with that. Also, what I mean, when because in Connecticut, Husky B doesn't accept autism diagnosis. So if you have Husky B and you have a child, you cannot get autism services in Connecticut. So you need A, C, or D, right? And that's some of the things that a lot of people, parents, don't know in Connecticut, right? But then it's some of the big things. When you're changing insurance, you need to to figure out if that insurance company that you're changing to will cover ABA services before you make that change. Because then when you have a lapse in those services and now you're not able to pay, the insurance is not paying that company, that's when you run into like issues with these companies. So there's access to insurance is a big thing. And for some people right now, it's just access to companies, right? Because you have a big waiting list for ABA services, a big waiting list. For me, I try to stick close to my Black families, right? But there's a major waiting list when it comes to ABA services.
Okay, thank you. So some of the things we talked about, was going to be about advocacy and awareness, right? And so throughout the program, we've heard 504 plans and allow that to help get access. We heard about IEPs. We heard about the barriers of insurance, the need for after-school care, and different programming. So my question becomes, and we'll start with you, Ruel, how can we better support parents and caregivers in advocating for their children's needs?
So having being a part of support groups and knowing what they need to advocate for, what they need to ask for is a big thing. What I mean? Because I do believe that, with the knowledge will come the advocacy and the confidence to ask what they need for. So as a community, when you see someone, and they have a child on the spectrum, about these services, connect them with people who have may have a child with autism too, so they could start building that gap and bridging that gap and making their network available to them. So at some point in time, Jane may say that, hey, I got this from here, and this is what you need to ask for, and this is how you ask for it, right? So I think the biggest thing that we need to do is just connecting our families with supports, and a support in the community, and so they could start having those conversations. So you could go to these school districts and know what you're asking for, right? And you could go to these ABA services companies and know what you ask for. Go to these clinics and know what you're asking for, because when you're a mother or a father and your child is newly diagnosed, and you're just sitting here and people just spewing a whole bunch of acronyms at you, they're just in the fray at that point in time. They're just on the ropes, right? So I think the biggest thing is just supporting each other in our networks and start disseminating the information. You could call me and talk to me if you need to, and I could give you some advice and what to do, especially in Connecticut, right? But it's just building that network.
Brother Wealth, I'm sure people appreciate you offering your services, but I think they want to know, will you be giving them advice as a public school educator or as a business owner? Because that business owner might come with a price.
No, I'll give them advice as a brother, as someone that's doing service in the community.
We appreciate you, brother. Tracey, how can we better support parents and caregivers in advocating for their children's needs?
Well, that was one of the reasons why I started the foundation, is to provide the resources and the supports to the families, and bringing in people such as Ruel and Lekisha to speak to the groups, what they're experiencing, and providing them with the tools they need to advocate for themselves and for one another, and actually joining them in on some of those meetings. I mean, two is better than one. Never go to those meetings alone. And so if you have someone that can go with you, bring them.
Okay, thank you. Lekisha, I want to pivot a little bit because we're almost out of time. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your other project that we didn't mention in your bio, that you being an author.
Yes, sir. The Little Professor and Rainbow series is the name of our book. So it's The Little Professor Meets Rainbow. It is actually the story of our journey from birth to diagnosis. And it just talks about the different nuances that we noticed with my daughter from the very beginning. Something as simple as her not liking to wear her bib, sensory concerns, her spinning the wheels on the trucks in her daycare, her singing her ABCs over and over and over again. And then us also understanding that having the conversation after not walking at 12 months, like my son had done, not being afraid to have that conversation with her pediatrician about some of the concerns that I had. Although I asked those questions with tears in my eyes and a trembling voice, I still needed to have that conversation. I still recall the pediatrician telling me that she was like so proud of me for asking the question, because most parents don't ask, right? When she tells them, they get defensive and they're ready to leave the practice. And so that day, my life changed in that storm, and we put that in the book. But this book is written for both children and adults. It's illustrated by one of my former students who is on the spectrum, and he illustrates the entire book using just a simple pack of Crayola color pencils. And so what he is able to bring to life is his gift, is his autism, his rainbow. And so what we want parents to walk away from when they read the series is that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to miss it, but it's not okay to just let it ride, right? And so Mommy Professor and Daddy Professor are here to walk them through some of those life events that we don't think about from an ASD perspective. The first book is The Little Professor Meets Rainbow, which the psychologist gives her this rainbow as a special gift and a forever friend, indicating that autism is not something she's going to outgrow, right? This is something that will be with her forever. And so we might as well be best friends with it because it's not going away. The second book is now out, and it's called The Little Professor and Rainbow Meet Miss Mira. Miss Mira was our behavior interventionist, like Ruel was telling you about all of those different acronyms that we spent a year online with our services through Babies Can't Wait. And we talked about all the things that she taught me as a parent in dealing with my daughter on the spectrum, and understanding that there was a place for me, the parent, in the therapy, and that the only way that the therapy was going to be successful is if I actively took part in it, and that I understood that what I did consistently would change the outcome. Most parents fast forward 20 years when they get their diagnosis. We immediately talk about all the things that our children will never be able to do. They'll never live on their own. They'll never get married. They'll never have children. We do that. We fast forwarded, and I was no different than any other parent. I fast forwarded. But my intervention specialist said, stop. Today is today. And what we do today will determine what happens tomorrow and 20 years from now. So we must do the work now so that we can change the outcome later. So you don't know what 20 years will look like because we're working on 20 years today. And so that was something that blessed me in a way that I share that with every parent who fast forwards the remote, right? As soon as they get the diagnosis, we just pause, take a deep breath, right? And take it one day at a time, but we're active and intentional every day that we're involved with our children. So that's the series. It will continue as we enter into different phases. The little professor goes to school. The little professor goes to the dentist. People don't realize how intentional autism parents have to be when we just do the simple things that everybody takes for granted, like going to the dentist, for example. No one thinks about the front loading on that, but that drill in her mouth was something different. Remember, I've been working on telling her not to put things in her mouth, but they needed her to take what? X-rays. So now I have to convince her to let them put something in her mouth that we've taught her not to do. So again, we are very intentional when we front load with our kids and we interact, things that most neurotypical parents just take for granted. So that series covers a lot of those things that we have to be intentional about. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to ask you all to take us out with one final thought. But before we do, I just want to acknowledge all of the people who joined us this evening, the people who interacted with the chat, And some of the things that people are talking about is Lorraine said that we need to destigmatize diagnosis. A lot of people are giving you all props for the things that you're saying. About educating parents is crucial. Kanika shared that she's thankful that her son's ABA is allowed in his school and his RBT is with him every Monday through Friday. So they're getting the services that they need. And we have a couple of other school employees. And as a school social worker, Lorraine advocates and PPTs for her parents. And we have a brother out of Boston who's a educator, a counselor, and he talked about the that in an affluent community that folks are always advocating and getting the services for their children. So I think this is a wonderful conversation. We'll have to begin to wrap. But I just want to say that we just need to keep the conversations going. So I'm really happy that you all were able to join us because I think the stigma is still there, and we need to continue pushing forward. And that data about Black children being having the most diagnosis, I imagine that that's a good thing. The fact that people are getting the early assessments and being able to advocate. And I will have to put a plug in for ACEs, Area Cooperative Educational Services, because those folks that work with our student and adult learners do God's work every day with students and helping them practice those skills. And you talk about respite, just so families can be able to take their kids to a restaurant, right, or to a mall, or to a movie, and help them be able to go into a store. And all those things are so important. And the last plug I want to put in is, and I'm going to go back to our last Uplift series when we talked about philanthropy. Lekisha and Tracey talked about having these organizations, right? And these organizations need support. So Lekisha and Tracey, when you give your last words, please just tell our audience how we can support you all, whether it's with our work or even with our finances as well. Okay, and I'd ask that we'll close out the way we came in. I'll start with Tracey.
You can support by donations. That's on the website. I put that information in the chat. You can support by sharing the foundation. If you're on my page, I put the information out there, sharing that information with family and friends. Any support, volunteers, any support helps.
Okay, and right, and with your annual events, the walk and the pageant, and then you had your gala, so plenty of opportunities for us to be able to support you. So share that information, and we'll help share that as well. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lekisha, please, last final words.
Yes, thank you. We can be followed on Instagram at Chasing Grace, as well as on Facebook, Chasing Grace Foundation, again, raising an African-American child on the autism spectrum. And so we ask that you share that information with our communities, again, engaging in those really transparent yet courageous conversations about something that is so vitally important to our community. And so also you can support us by purchasing the book on Amazon. Again, The Little Professor Meets Rainbow and The Little Professor and Rainbow Meet Miss.
Well, I'm gonna need to maybe we could work something out with AJ because I don't do Amazon, so you know.
All right, he has a pass. He can
And,
share it.
and if you could put that in the chat, Lekisha.
Yes, I sure will.
And thank you, and again, and thank you, Tracey and Lekisha, for your courage, your advocacy for your children, and also being willing to share your experiences, and advocate and help other parents advocate for their children. You all are the real heroes. And then Brother Dixon will give you the final word, brother.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just like to, say thank you for everyone for coming out. But, just remember that in this realm, and what we're talking about ASD, is one of the things that you want to think about is don't be ashamed and consistency and generalization, right? Everyone has to do the same thing when you're working with your child. We all have to say the same things and do it the same way across different people, across different environments. And that's how the best way to teach, so it's going to be a long road. It will be a lot of work, but you have support, you have help, and just remember consistency.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all, the panelists. You are clearly the subject matter experts here tonight. Thank you for imparting your wisdom. And thank you for allowing me to help drive this, be a part of this conversation. And with that, I will turn it over to Brother Jones to take us out.
Thank you, Brother Walton. I thank everybody for coming on and participating in this program as well. To the Social Action Committee, a job well done. And thank you. We hope to see you next season at our next Uplift series. Good night, everybody.
Now, and before you log off, we're going to turn it over to Ruel and Giggy. But also, please keep in mind, November 8th, save the date. November 8th, Epsilon Iota will be celebrating 35 years of service to the greater New Haven community, and all are invited. So please keep that in mind. And I'll turn it over to our chair, Brother Martindale.
Yeah, thanks, Brother Moderator. So I also want to thank Kevin Walton. I want to thank panelists. I want to thank the folks that attended tonight. And also another date to keep in mind, June 14th, free market at the Q House. That's our next event that's coming up. So thanks, everybody. And for the brothers of EI, if you can stay on the line.
And that free market is our partnership with New Haven Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. That's right. Brother Dixon.
I just want to thank everybody for coming out, man, on behalf of my chapter. Thanks for supporting me. Thanks to Ms. Foskey. Thanks to Lekisha for being our panelists. And, you know, this was a great and vibrant discussion. Just look forward to many more. And thank for everyone for spending their Wednesday evening with us. It's been an hour and 40 minutes that we've been on here talking about this, but it's something that needs to be said. It's information that needs to go out to our community. So once again, thank you all. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Again, the brothers, if you can stay on, please. Thank you.